some things I don't ever want to do. One of those is actually shooting one of our own buffalo. I remember pulling it up and looking at him and listening to him breathe and ultimately pulling the trigger. In case you're wondering, that is still not full. It has not rained for a good couple, 3-4 weeks. It's been a week or so since we dug that. Still no water. I recently had a conversation with a friend of mine who also raises buffalo or bison, however you want to say it. And he was telling me of a story of how he actually had to shoot one of his first animals and how tough that was. It reminded me of the first animal that we actually purchased at auction, and I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about that story. So it all started out when I really decided that I really wanted to raise this animal. We finally were able to get property purchased, and it finally came time to go to the bison auction. Hey guys. They're curious, but they're not curious enough to get that close. Hey girl. Not today. See how far these guys follow us around the field. What are you guys doing? They're getting awful friendly these days. Sometimes that's a good thing and sometimes it's not so good. You always want to look out for a friendly animal that's so big like that. So it really all started when I really wanted to raise this magnificent animal, bison or buffalo, however you want to say it. I really had a passion for the animal. I really had a drive to be able to raise them, to be able to get out onto the land and just enjoy them out into the field. That's shorting out. That should be a lot better. At this point, my wife and I had worked on getting property for a couple years. There was a lot of time and effort put into, and money put into getting things ready for these animals. I had spoken to one of the bison producers and they said that your corral really needed to come first. So that's what I did. I took my 1986 Ford F-250, rented a 20-foot trailer, and headed down to Oklahoma to get oiled field pipe so that I could start on the corral. I got down to Oklahoma somewhere around 6 or 7 at night, and we were able to load up, I think it was somewhere around 30 pipes onto that 20-foot trailer. The complications in doing that was that those pipes were about 33 foot long. So 13 foot of that hung off the back end of the trailer. Not a smart move at all, but at the time, young and stupid, I guess you could say, I thought that I needed to get it done and get it back home. Once loaded and on the way home, I got up to about 50 to 55 miles an hour, and the back end of the truck started. These guys are coming over. What are you guys doing, huh? Red Prairie came running over to me. They just don't believe it that I don't have feed. So I got up to about 50 to 55 miles an hour with that truck, and those pipes, that 13 foot off the back end of that trailer, started bouncing, and it started lifting up the back end of that truck. And I'll tell you what, almost went over into the ditch. It was so scary. Got back that night at 2 o'clock in the morning, got everything unloaded, and the next weekend I had to get everything welded up because the following weekend was the Bison auction. Strong wind stomped at the ground and kind of chased Wolf a little bit. He keeps trying to rile them up. He's a good dog, but I don't like him out here with the herd with me nearby. So after we got everything home, the following weekend, we started welding everything up. I wanted to get together a 20 by 20 by 7 high corral for the calves that I was getting ready to bring in the following weekend. I had never used a stick welder before, and some of you guys might be familiar with that, some not. It's basically a form of welding that you put a rod on a surface of metal and you electrify that surface, and then it will take and melt that rod. So I had done some type of welding, but never that type. And so I thought, can't be that hard. Well, as things always go with me, it was that hard. So just like the trailer I had rented this welder also. So I needed to get it back to the rental station by the time the weekend was over. So I got everything cut and tacked up through the weekend and started welding Sunday night. And let me tell you, it did not go well. But I was able to get it all welded up that night. It was a rough, long night. Kind of like what we did the other night with trenching. But we got it done, and it was actually really strong, sturdy, small, 20 by 20 by 7 corral. And that's what we really just wanted to start out with. So then came the big day. We went out to the auction in Salina, Kansas, and I went out there with my brother, and we purchased the first 2 bison that would ever set foot on the farm. I can't really put into words the effort and the emotional feeling that I had when those animals set foot onto the ground, and we just felt like the journey was there. We had finally started on the trail. It was just an amazing feeling. I was so vested in these animals. So I've told the story before, but that first bull that we bought, his name was Bill or Billy. And then the heifer that I bought right with him was named Curly. Just a few days after that, we went out and bought another heifer. So we had 3 on the farm in that 20 by 20 by 7 corral that I had built that took so much effort to get done. We had one of the hardest winters that year. When we brought them back, it was -13 that week, and my heart just sank. I thought that for sure they were not going to survive. I was doing everything that I could to keep the ice from forming on the top of the water troughs, but to no avail. I went out there every morning and every evening with a pick and tried to pull off the 6 inches or more of ice that was on the top. Ended up busting through multiple water troughs with the ice pick that I had, the axe basically, and it was just a struggle. But I'll tell you what, it was so much fun because the animals were on the land. Outside of spending time with the wife and kids, I really tried to spend as much time out there as I could. Really just getting to know them, taking care of them, feeding them hay every day, and it was just an absolute blast. I really felt like I was doing something finally that I really wanted to do, and it was coming to fruition, and all of our hard work was all coming to a head, and it was all worth it. Sometimes that top wire gets loose because the deer like to jump over it and they kind of get snagged. just loosens up the wire. You just got to check it every once in a while and tighten it up. No big deal. I was working a lot of nights then. I would take and get home about 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, and I would go out and I'd feed the bison and basically continue my second job. But the second job was far better than the first. So we purchased more animals in the months to follow, and we had about 15 animals that spring. We thought everything was going really well. It was hard, it was a lot of work, but we thought that we were making it. And really we were, until something really hard happened. What I really didn't know what was going on behind the scenes was that they all had worms really bad. I didn't know how to handle them, so the entire herd started going downhill with their health issues. I really didn't know what to do. I ended up reaching out to a gentleman who I am really good friends with now, Peter Cole, and he really helped me get a grasp on what was going on inside their body and what needed to happen with all these worms basically taking over their gut. It seemed like every day for a couple weeks there was new development in the herd. I remember pulling in one day and looking out and counting them and seeing if we had lost any that day, and the entire herd just looked horrible. We had I can't remember the exact number, but somewhere around 15, give or take, around that time. And we had lost 1 or 2 at that point. And I remember looking at the herd, and they were just skin and bones. I really felt like it happened overnight. I didn't know what I was doing wrong, and all the hard work, everything that we had put into it, time, money, emotions, effort, everything, was getting ready to just die. I reached out to that now friend of mine, Peter Cole, at that point. I didn't know anybody in the Buffalo community, and I really didn't know how to approach people. I felt like they were kind of competitors, and I felt like if I went and asked someone else who ranched, they would feel like I was asking their secrets, when in reality that wasn't the case at all. I reached out to Peter Cole, and he was just so helpful. He really wanted to see me succeed and to see the animals succeed. And I think what it really comes down to is because a lot of these bison producers, or buffalo producers, however you want to say it, they really have a passion for the animal itself. And that bleeds over into the people that raise the animals. So Peter really helped me. He gave me the tools and told me what to do and what steps we needed to take in order to try and save the herd. But he told me something. He said, you know, given how far gone they are, there might be some, if not all of them, might just die. The reason for that is when they get so many worms in their gut and their body can't take it, and then you go in there with a dewormer and you kill those worms, that will create a toxin inside their gut, and that toxin is poisonous. And if their immune system is not healthy enough, it'll just kill them. Obviously, I had to take that chance. I really didn't know what to do other than listening to this gentleman who had raised buffalo for over 30 years. And so I had to take his advice. So we went ahead and did it. We dewormed them, and I would say from the get-go, most of them took off in just a straight up shot of health. They got their appetites back, and they really did really well, except for one, Billy. Through all that, he got really friendly. It was really interesting to watch. The rest of the herd was fairly standoffish. Curly, the first heifer we bought, I could touch her nose just like I can touch Red Prairie's nose, and I could feed her through the fence. But Billy, there was something in him that I know he was asking for my help. It was something very surreal to watch a ruminant animal like that out on the pasture and look into their eyes, and you can tell that they are asking for your help. He would take and he would seclude himself away from the rest of the herd. And come to find out later, I find out that these are traits that a sick animal does. But I didn't know anything. I didn't know what was going on. That he would seclude himself away from the herd. He would go and he would roll or just sit in an ash pile that we had from a burn pit for all day. He wouldn't eat, he wouldn't drink, and you could just tell he was super depressed as an animal. So Billy got really friendly during that period. He would take and he would separate himself from the herd to seek me out. It was very strange, really kind of, even just talking about it, thinking about it now, really kind of brings up some emotions in me to talk about it. But when I would come home, the herd would be out in the middle of the field. He would see me and he would just walk straight to me. I didn't feed him very much. I don't think it was really a matter of he wanted feed or anything like that. I really think he was asking for help. After we wormed them, I would say 3/4 of the herd went up in progression. They did really well, all except for Billy. He took a turn for the worst. He went down and it didn't look good for him. Got to the point to where he was laying down and couldn't get up. And at that point, when they lay down like that, they can get a lot of pneumonia built up through their lungs because they're not designed to lay down for extended periods of time. And I think that's what he did. He got pneumonia. He could barely breathe. So at that point, I had to make a decision whether or not to let him suffer and inevitably pass away, or try to put him out of his misery a little bit sooner. Ultimately, the decision I made was to put him out of his misery. I remember aiming at him at point blank and thinking everything that we had worked for, everything that we had done for the ranch, and the relationship that you almost tried to build with this animal. And he was our first bison. And I had to take and put him out. And I remember pulling the trigger and listening to his last gasps. And I'll tell you what, that was hard. I don't know if it was so hard because of all the work that was put in and all the emotions that was put in. I don't know if it was so hard because of just how majestic of an animal they really are. Or if it was just a combination of everything. But I've never forgotten that, and I never will. And his skull sits on our entryway of our door at home, and I will always remember Billy. And I think honestly it was a little bit of a foreshadowing of what was to come, that this dream, this thing that we have here, that what we're trying to do, was not going to be easy. And unfortunately, my lack of knowledge, my lack of understanding led to Billy's death. Billy's and about 3 or 4 others also. Got some stories in there themselves, but I just really kind of reflected on that this week, and listening to a friend of mine and how they had to do almost the same thing. His animals got out. Wasn't sick, but the animals got out, and he had to make the decision of, you know, do you take them out now, or do you let them try to injure themselves or others? And he had to make that decision. It's not easy. It's pretty hard when you're so invested in the project of raising bison or buffalo. But I'll tell you what, you know, if I could go back, obviously I would do things differently, and I would not have those problems, maybe other problems that we had from the start, because I would have the knowledge that I have now. But that being said, you know, the experience that gave me, I wouldn't go back on. I really cherish the amount of life experience that I gained through that previous herd. It was a hard time, but ultimately we're better for it, and ultimately we are a better bison rancher and producer for it. I respect everybody's different opinions when it comes to killing bison or using them for meat. I get it. There's a lot of emotions that are wrapped up in that. I think it is good for us to use bison as meat. But it's a different story when you never intended for the animal to be meat, and you really intended for that animal to be around for the next 20, 30, 40 years on the farm, and it's the first animal that you ever bought. It just felt different. It didn't feel right. And it was just extremely hard. You know, Heidi and I have talked about doing meat, and I wrestle with that a lot of, can I raise an animal out in the field and know that it's going to go to slaughter? That's difficult, but I think it's a necessity. But this was a different story. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing that story of our first bison. He was a cool animal. I wish you guys could have seen him, and I really wish I had some pictures of him. So I hope you guys enjoyed hearing a little bit of background of our ranch. Thank you guys for your support. Thank you for subscribing if you haven't already. We have a Patreon if you guys are interested in supporting the ranch. The link is in the description below. Thank you guys for all that you do. We really appreciate it, Heidi and I and the kids. We will see you guys next time.